Have you ever watched something terrible unfold and thought, why didn't someone stop this? Maybe in your own life or on the news, moment where someone could have stepped in, should have, but didn't. Lucifer's rebellion is one of the most tragic and terrifying moments in all of Scripture. The fall didn't start on earth. It started in heaven, in God's throne room, among angels. Almost no one asks the question, where was Michael? God's warrior, the Archangel, the one who leads the arms of heaven. When I came across the story of Lucifer's rebellion, I was taken by a mix of emotions that led me to reflect deeply. It is hard to imagine that a heavenly being as great as Lucifer has succumbed to the temptation of vanity and pride, failing to see the beauty of his own light as a divine gift. As this shadow slowly approached the heart of Lucifer, I was able to witness in silence. Just like Miguel, the scene was almost distressing to see the magnitude of Miguel's imminent fall and the initial inertia in the face of Lucifer's deteriorated magnificence. This experience changed my perception of spiritual leadership and spiritual war. I found that Miguel's initial silence was not weakness or absence, but something much deeper. It was at this moment that I understood that the weight often precedes a greater revelation. As I watched, disturbed, Lucifer's corruption spreading like a stain between the heavenly hosts, I realized the subtlety of his mistake. It was not with violence or imposition that he convinced the angels to follow him, but with words that sowed doubts and uncertainties about divine sovereignty. With each whispered conversation, with every skewed look, another angelic soul deviated from the path of pure worship and was carried away by the promise of power and autonomy. It was like witnessing the fall of sparkling stars of the firmament, one after another, in a sad and silent dance toward the rebellion. And in the midst of this growing chaos, Miguel remained motionless, not for inertia or indifference, but for faithfulness, waiting for the divine moment to intervene. The battle for the heart of angels was fought not with shiny swords, but with insidious arguments that undermined confidence in the Creator. There, in that atmosphere of imminent betrayal, I understood the meaning of Miguel's unshakable loyalty and the wisdom of waiting and the certainty of divine victory. As I watched, disturbed, Lucifer's corruption spreading like a stain between the heavenly hosts, I realized the subtlety of his mistake. It was not with violence or imposition that he convinced the angels to follow him, but with words that sowed doubts and uncertainties about divine sovereignty. With each whispered conversation, with every skewed look, another angelic soul deviated from the path of pure worship and was carried away by the promise of power and autonomy. It was like witnessing the fall of sparkling stars of the firmament, one after another, in a sad and silent dance toward the rebellion. And in the midst of this growing chaos, I remained motionless, not out of inertia or indifference, but for faithfulness, waiting for the divine moment to intervene. The battle for the heart of angels was fought not with shiny swords, but with insidious arguments that undermined confidence in the Creator. There, in that atmosphere of imminent betrayal, I understood the meaning of Miguel's unshakable loyalty and the wisdom of waiting in the certainty of divine victory. Immersed in the heavenly scenario, I witnessed the moment when Lucifer, wrapped in his own rebellion, dared to challenge the divine order before the heavenly court. His arrogance echoed through the corridors of God's throne as his words of challenge cut off the fresh air of paradise. It was at this moment of supreme affront that I witnessed Miguel, the warrior archangel, lifting himself with a determination that shared Eden's own foundations. His penetrating gaze overflowed a unique mixture of compassion and divine justice, reflecting the unparalleled light of eternal presence. And when heavenly hosts were preparing for the epic confrontation between good and evil, I saw in Miguel not only a fearless warrior, but an instrument of the sovereign will of the Most High. His firm posture and eloquent silence announced that there was one who would not battle for vanity or personal glory, but for absolute loyalty to the Creator of the worlds. The imminent clash between Miguel and Lucifer reverberated in eternity as an indelible milestone in the cosmic battle between the radiant light of the truth and the insidious darkness of lies. And at that sublime moment, when the destinies of the heavenly stars hovered in the thread of the divine sword. It was clear to all the heavenly beings gathered that Miguel was not simply a herald of heavenly war, but the living reflection of the redeeming power that would lead to the final victory over all evil. Immersed in the heavenly atmosphere, I witnessed the titanic clash between Archangel Miguel and Lucifer, the bearer of fallen light. The magnitude of that battle transcended the simple notions of confrontation, echoing by eternity as a clear watershed between light and darkness. The glowing eyes of the two heavenly beings met in the whirlwind of cosmic emotions, reflecting the intensity of the conflict that unfolded before me. Miguel, with his raised flaming sword, emanated an aura of divine authority, his unshakable purpose as a rock before the storm. On the other hand, Lucifer displayed a perverse mix of arrogance and despair in his staggering stance, blinded by the illusion of self-sufficiency and revolt against true heavenly order. The shock between the two heavenly beings reverberated in the heavenly chambers with an overwhelming intensity, echoing beyond the known spheres of the universe. As angelic armies witnessed this definitive duel between absolute loyalty and the unbridled rebellion, the very essence of creation seemed to freeze in anticipation of the imminent outcome. At the critical moment when the divine element was in a direct confrontation with the infast corruption in the heart of Lucifer, I could glimpse not only a spectacle of transcendent power and glory, but also the silent supplication for redemption that echoed into the depths of the abyss divided between good and evil. And when I finally saw Miguel triumph over Lucifer's rebel hosts, it was not just a victory for the heavenly hosts, it was the inflexible statement of the unshakable love of the Creator to his creation. Obedience often looks like stillness before the storm. Just like Michael waited for God's command amidst rebellion in heaven, we must also trust that obedience precedes victory. What if the delay in your breakthrough isn't denial, but spiritual warfare? Remember that just as Michael fought for God's people unseen, there are battles being waged on our behalf beyond what we can perceive.